Say the sound. This is a short letter. Write it without lifting the pencil and slant lines in the direction in which we write. Start at the midpoint, slant a straight line down to the baseline in the direction in which we write. Slant a straight line up to the midpoint.
Now did you notice the tendency would be to lift the pencil at the baseline and then pull another line this way. But this is economy. Actually, it's economy of stroke because you go down and up, right? You don't lift the pencil, take the time and make another stroke. So it's economical in that regard. You go down, up, okay?
Show card 23 and say the sound W. This is a short letter. Write it without lifting the pencil and slant lines in the direction in which we write. Start at the midpoint and slant a straight line down to the baseline. Slant a straight line up to the midpoint.
Up to the midpoint.
Slant a straight line down to the baseline.
Down to the baseline.
Then slant a straight line up to the midpoint.
Up to the midpoint. Back up, down, up, down. No unnecessary motion. Takes a little more skill, but can be done. Okay. All right.
Show card 24 and say the sound X.
The fast one.
The fast one.
Right. Because you can see, if you don't say that, there could be some confusion. It says kasa, right? The letter C. No, X.
The fast one.
Letter X. Okay.
This is a short letter. Slant the first line in the direction in which we write. Start at the midpoint and slant a straight line down to the baseline. Lift the pencil and starting at the midpoint, slant a straight crossbar through the middle of the letter down to the baseline.
Alright? It's like two little triangles meeting at a point. Okay? Just 2 strokes now. Lifting the pencil in this case. Anything that requires a cross piece, you have to lift the pencil for this. Also for the k, you have to lift the pencil to make that.
Show card 25 and say the 3 sounds. Yeah.
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 I. Yeah. It, I. First sound is the consonant. The last 2 are the vowel, like the vowel I. It says it, I. So this sometimes has the function of the vowel it, I. So we say yeah, it, I. It has 2 jobs, this particular monogram, okay?
This is a short letter that goes below the baseline. Form it without lifting the pencil. Start at the midpoint with a short down line to 8.
8 o'clock.
Round from 8 to 4, touching the baseline.
Back up.
And continue up to the midpoint. Pull a straight line down the same distance below the baseline, round from 4 to 8.
4 to 8. I don't think I did that so well. Let me try that one again. The line wavered a bit. Okay. So again, we start at the midpoint. Drop down to 8, curve around to the baseline, back up to 4, go straight up to the midpoint, drop down to 4, same distance below the line, curving up and around to 8. Okay, so we have our positions here, 8, 4, 4, 8. Okay?
Show card 26 and say the sound Z. Class repeats the sound. This is a short letter. Form the first horizontal line in the direction in which we write. Form the letter without lifting the pencil. Start at the midpoint, pull a straight horizontal line. Slant a straight line to the baseline below the starting point of the top line.
And then we come back
make a straight line in the direction in which we write. Top and bottom lines should be parallel.
Okay. Just one, without lifting the pencil, one touch. Right, down to the left, in the direction in which we write, not backwards or something like that. Because some letters are easily flipped. Sometimes I've seen children start writing instead of the backwards, this way. Okay, so start in the direction in which we write. Okay, very important to say those things. For beginners, they haven't developed the perception to sense those directions sometimes. Very little children, under 5. Okay, so that completes the lowercase of the alphabet. And let me now take a look at the text. I'll just borrow your book here for a second. See what else information we want to add in conclusion. She says, as with clock letters, have children practice writing line letters across the page to develop ease of formation and correct spacing between the letters. The paper should look like this. So she has children practice not only individual letters, but combinations to develop a sense of space. So the letters are not too compressed and they're not too far apart. So she did that first before we saw with the round, the ones that included the round letters that started at 2. And now she's done this with the letters that begin with a straight line. Those letters that begin at 2 on the clock have been taught, and also those that begin with a line. Teach the spacing of both kinds of letters by dictating the alphabet, saying only each letter's sound or sounds. Have children say the sounds and write the letters across the page. The first letter written on a page should be written carefully because every letter that follows should be of the same relative size. So in other words, to practice the entire lowercase, it's done in 2 parts, right? It's done first with the letters or phonograms that begin at 2, and then the second one is done with the phonograms that begin with a straight line. And this practice should be for spacing. Right, so the children develop a sense of spacing. And then you have the entire alphabet. Okay, so you get the whole alphabet afterwards like this. You practice the entire alphabet. When students are learning to write the single phonograms, teach them to articulate the directions as italicized as they write. After clearly demonstrating and precisely explaining the general rules and features of the phonograms, ask questions to check students' understanding. Questions such as, where do all the letters sit? Where do they sit?
On the line.
On the baseline. Allow children to state general rules. Other questions such as, how would I write the phonogram a, ah? Give students the opportunity to verbalize the formation of letters. In other words, they should be able to explain the steps. Observe students writing and listen as they explain the concepts and procedures. Then provide further instruction or refinements to increase their understanding. When students practice single phonograms, have them write at least 3 different letters at a time. Example, a, b, k, s, rather than a row of each letter. This requires them to use their minds while practicing letter formation. Now remember, we warned about that when we were doing practice. If they just write a, after a few times it becomes mechanical and they don't think about it. But if they have to change the letter, then they have to stop and rethink. The tendency for becoming mechanical sets in if there's too much repetition. So here she recommends at least 3 letters at a time. Have small groups take turns writing at the board. Send 1 row of children at a time to the board to review each day's lesson. Make sure each child holds the chalk or marker properly, says the sounds, and writes each letter correctly, and then erases correctly. Errors in writing can thus be readily caught and corrected. Clear and easy handwriting takes patience, supervision, and consistent feedback from the teacher, as well as personal evaluation from children to develop a sense of pride and accomplishment. They should recognize that, I'm doing this correctly, and a sense of appreciation of that. Okay, so it goes on here about other phonograms at the same time. Okay. And then we go into the manuscript capital letters. So we'll stop this session at this point, and then I think we can do these pretty automatically, right? We'll do those 4, and then just do the uppercase. And we've accomplished that. Then the numerals are also taught, right? Nothing is left to chance. And they follow the same procedure, 2, 10, 8, 4, with straight lines. Okay, so we'll stop at this point. So the next 2 sessions will be demonstrating the capitalization, right, of the letters, and demonstrating the numerals. You've now seen the formation of the lowercase letter according to the clock face models. And according to Mrs. Spalding, we're going to read a little bit of philosophical background information before we begin the section on the lower page of page 29, the lower part of page 29, just to reinforce our understanding of the importance of precision. Mrs. Spalding explained in detail what to say to children who are learning to write, because it is necessary to be specific if handwriting is to become a correct and facile tool for learning. If letters are made incorrectly, they are mentally pictured incorrectly also. This is a serious cause of reading failure, because beginners do not then recognize the letters when they appear in print. Rehearse the phonograms and all their common sounds until the children see each in a printed word as standing out as a sound, not merely as a letter or letters. Phonograms are practiced 2 ways daily. The children read the sounds from the cards, which is called an oral phonogram review, and the teacher dictates the sounds of the phonograms for the children to write in a written review. Establish a consistent routine that makes daily oral and written phonogram reviews efficient. Okay, I just wanted to write, that was the conclusion to the section on lowercase manuscript writing. Now, in the topic heading letters, we have manuscript capital letters. I will read the introductory information before we start demonstrating the uppercase capital manuscript letters. Be sure the lowercase letters are well learned before introducing all the capital letters. Some capital letters are needed early, such as the first letter in a child's name. Children should be taught the rules for the use of capital letters and be required to give the reason each time they use a capital. When children learn that a capital is used only where the rules of English require it, they will not insert capitals indiscriminately. All capital letters are tall. They are twice as high as short letters. They almost fill the space between the baseline and the line above. The rules for round lowercase letters also apply to the following capital letters. They each start at 2 on the clock and go up. Since these are tall letters, the round parts are somewhat elongated vertically. Give the sound or sounds of each capital letter before showing how to write it, and have children repeat the sound or sounds before they write each letter. The crossbar on the cue starts at the top and slants in the direction in which we write, ending just below the base line. Okay? Now from this point on, I will demonstrate, and I think we'll just have you call out the, let's see, what do they have us do next here? We have the ones there with the begin at 2, and then you see the entire alphabet. Okay, right. Okay, so you just call out the phonogram starting on the other page, the ones that begin at 2, and that way we will model the capitals, just so there's no doubt for children or parents. And again, reference could be made to the book, but as you know, watching a demonstration does help clarify the understanding. Okay, so you want to tell me the first phonogram, capital what?
It's letter C, kus.
Okay, capital kus. All right, so we start at 2 o'clock. And remember, these are more elongated now. We're not going to follow a complete circle, otherwise too much space is ugly. They're slightly elongated, so we're not going to have such a big space and width taken up in the line. So we start at 2 o'clock, and remember, we don't go quite up to the top of the line. 2 o'clock, we start at 2, curve up and over to, and around to 10, dropping down to 8. We'll begin to curve back down to baseline and return to position 4. So we have 2, 10, 8, and 4. All right, capital K, S. All right, what's our next phonogram?
Good.
Good. Sure. All right, so again, we'll draw our upper line, and then we'll draw our baseline. And I believe in this one we have a horizontal at 3, right? Okay. So this requires a new reference point, a little additional reference point. Remember in the phonogram at E, lowercase letter, we had 2 additional reference points. So here we have an additional reference point. We're going to write the capital J, just like Kusa. We start at 2, curving up, almost touching the upper line, curving around to 10, curving back down to position 8, where we start curving into the baseline, and then we curve up again to not just to 4, we continue to the midpoint at 3, and then we come in with the horizontal to the left. Good job. So our reference points here are 2 and 10 and 8, and here's 4 and here's 3. Okay, good job. Okay, the next phonogram.
Ooh.
Okay, the first one is ah. Practice with your phonogram CD will help. That's why we made it, just because the person that you learned it from isn't around, and at least you can listen to the CD and try to approximate the count. If you start approximating a different sound with the children, then they will learn what you say. So that's okay. So again, we start at 2, reference point 2, curve up almost to the top, curve around to 10, curving back down to 8, coming down to the baseline, curving back up to 4, continuing up with the curve, and connecting back again at 2. So we have 4 reference points, 2, and 10, and 8, and 4. Okay, capital A, O.
The next one doesn't actually have the U next to it. It's Q without the U, so is that still Q?
Right, we would say Q. They're just showing the letter here.
They're showing the
letter.
letter.
Letter right here. They're just showing
Q?
Q. Okay. So we have the capital letter Q. It's a phonogram clock, but we don't have the U in this sample. 2 o'clock. Again, 2 o'clock. Curve up. Almost touching the line. Curve around to 10. Curve back down to 8, come down to the baseline, curve up to 4, continue your curve, and connect back at 2, and you notice there's a little slanted line that crosses over at this point, and then they show it going down a little bit closer to the baseline like that.
It actually goes over the
Just a
baseline.
little bit over the baseline like that. Cool. So it looks like someone sipping from a soda straw. Right? Okay. The next phonogram capital is? Okay, capital Z. All right, this one requires all 4 reference points. These are difficult. This one's a little difficult to make because we have to reverse direction. Okay, so we start at 2, and we curve up and around, almost touching the line, over to 10. And at 10, we then swing over to the other direction, down to 4. Curve back up to 8. Okay, so we have our reference points 2 and 10 and 4 and 8. Okay, this one could be a little bit, could have curved in there a little better. Okay, position. Okay, next one. So now we've done the ones that include the clock face positions, so now we're going to do the other parts of the alphabet.
But there's more than one horizontal line. So.
You see?
A,
F-A-R. Okay, so we have the capital letter, F-A-R. And we start at the top. And I think they show here the numbers and the directions. We have to pick up our pencil and go back to the top. Okay, so 3 strokes are required for this. We start at the top. We drop a slanted line, and that's clearly shown in the model in the book. And we go back from the top, and we drop another slanted line down to the baseline, and then we draw a horizontal line across, connecting the 2 slanted lines, with the capital letter A-R. And in the book, you'll see arrows pointing direction. Okay. Next one again. Capital B. Right? Capital B. Okay, so again we have, this is all your capitals are tall letters, right? None of them are less than that. So we drop the descending line back here. And from my understanding, I suppose we're allowed to lift the pencil on this one. She's never said whether you cannot. Did she say in that? I believe I'm lifting it up here. You come across.
The pencil is lifted before making the second lines of A, B, D, E, F, H, I, K, M, N, P, R, and T.
Okay, so you are allowed to lift the pencil.
They also begin at the top.
Okay, so we curve around again at 2, and you curve in again at 4, and you come back in against the base, against the vertical line, and you come back out again and start curving over at 2, and curving around to 4, and you touch the baseline, and then you come straight in. Okay, capital B. Right. Next one is capital D. Capital D. So she doesn't have us retrace for that one. We start with a capital straight line here. And we are allowed to lift to come back, going straight out. And at a certain point, we start to curve over to 2 and curve over around. Remember, elongate these before you start to pull in. And then in the baseline, you come in that capital D. Right.
She did mention previously not to teach B and D together, but is that just...
It's capitals that would be quite different. It's just that the lowercase, they look the same but reversed. They often teach the word bed for children. Bed. I've seen this in some books. And these are the 2 posts on the bed. So the B is first, and the post on the D is at the end. This is your little bed. just another trick I've seen in other books. It does happen. They do confuse the 2. And there'll be very, very little children who confuse the 2. Okay, our next one again.
F, E.
Okay, F-E. Capital F-E. So we have a tall straight line here coming almost to the top. And we go across horizontally at the top and we lift the pencil. Obviously you have to lift your pencil 3 times. And another horizontal line in the middle, not as far out. And one at the baseline that is equidistant to the top line. The middle one is not as long. Capital F-E. Our next capital letter. Capital. A tall straight line, beginning almost at the top of the upper space, dropping it down to the baseline. Draw a horizontal in the direction in which we write. And the middle one again, not quite as long. Okay, next capital. Capital. Baseline. Okay, again, this is pretty easy. Two perpendicular lines that are parallel. And a horizontal cross piece. Going in the direction in which we write. Capital. Okay. The next one again. I. And I believe she shows tiny little pieces across the top. She shows tiny little strokes across the top. So we have a tall perpendicular line, very small little cross pieces at the top and the bottom. Baseline, okay? Next one again? J. Excuse me. Again, we start on the right side this time, dropping a perpendicular line down to the position of 4, and it curves around, touches the baseline, and it curves out to the position of 8, and we put a small little horizontal line at the top, little capital J. Okay. Next monogram.
K.
Good. Capital K. We draw a tall perpendicular line. And we come down to the baseline. And then we have, again, just lifting the pencil. You have to lift the pencil. You come all the way to the right and draw a slanted line down to the midpoint of the vertical. And at this point, we pull out and go the opposite direction, down to the baseline. Just if I ran out of room there. Capital K. All right. Next one again. Capital O. You see, the capitals are actually pretty easy. Just a little bit larger. So capital O. Tall straight line. Drop it down to the baseline, and then go to the right in the direction in which we write. It's the capital O. Right.
The next one is
Capital Actually, I should make that one a little bit shorter so we can get it all in. We'll do it here so you can see. This one does not, the center portion does not drop down to the baseline. It goes midway. And I think this is all done with one, nose down, and then up, down. Okay, right. Two lines. Okay, we drop it down once, then we pick it up, and we go down midpoint, then up, and then we drop the second one down. Okay? Okay, capital Our next monogram?
capital P.
Did we do We didn't do right?
Oh,
I think I'll make these a little shorter so they don't get so elongated. Okay, capital O, we drop a straight line down to the baseline. Go back to the top, and we drop a line down. I believe we pull it straight up, right? We go straight up. Literally picking up the pencil one more time. Capital Okay, next one again.
capital P.
Capital P. Baseline. Tall straight line. Reaching almost to the top, dropping to the baseline. Pick up the writing pen and pencil. Come to the top. Go out horizontally. Begin pulling away at 2. Curving around at 4. And coming back in to the vertical line. Okay. Capital P.
Capital
Okay, capital. Okay. Have a tall straight line almost to the top. Drop down to the baseline, lift the pencil, come out horizontally, parallel with the upper line, start curving around to 2, then curve around to 4, then pull in back to the vertical line, and then we come out a little distance, almost again to the position of 2. And we curve, and it goes down. Okay. Next monogram.
capital T.
Capital T. Tall straight line here, almost to the top. Lift the pencil, and put a horizontal line drawn in the direction in which we write across the top. Capital T. They seem relatively easy after the lowercase letters have been done. They're not actually so difficult. It's pretty easy after that. Okay. A few may require a little additional skill, the ones that have the up-down strokes, but otherwise not so much of a challenge. Okay, next monogram.
Capital U-O.
Good, that was perfect. You good. She got that one perfectly. Okay, we draw a perpendicular line down to the position of 8. We curve around to the baseline, touch it, curve back up to 4. Then retrace, go straight up. And we keep our pencil on paper. And we drop it back down. And I think this one has a stem as well. Just like the lowercase U-O. Capital U-O. By this time, I think everybody's pretty conversant with the system, right? Not too much that doesn't seem logical, right? Everything's a few initial points at the beginning, but everything fits into the pattern, making it easy. Easy to learn and easy to follow. Okay. Next phonogram is
Capital. Yeah. I.
good. Perfect. Yeah. Again, I drew that one too large. I'll put a middle line here just so we see the descender. Okay. I. This one has upper and lower zones. Straight line down to position 8. Curve it around to 4. Go back up. Near the top, drop it back down. Go down below the line. See the distance to 4. And curve it back up to 8. Capital I.
It's the same, making it smaller.
Yes, but it's just larger. Same reference points. Okay. Now we have 4 phonograms that are grouped together. Would you like to read the opening statement before we begin those?
The capital letters V, W, and X are made just like the lowercase letters. First start at the top and make the line that slants in the direction in which we write. V and W are made without lifting the pencil. The second line of X starts at the top. Z is formed the same as its lowercase letter. The top line is drawn in the direction in which we write and is finished without taking the pencil off the paper.
All right. So we will now do capital V, right? First one.
Yes.
Without lifting the pencil, we drop down in a slant to the baseline, and without lifting the pencil, we go right back up to the top of the line, capital V. Right. We have 3 more to go, and these all follow the same kind of, or the same as the lowercase, just larger. The next one,
Capital W.
capital W. So this one starts at an angle, down. Maybe I've made this too compressed. I think I better make a smaller space there. It'll be too compressed. Make a smaller space here so the width is accommodated. Go like this. All right. At the top, near the top of the space, we drop a slanted line down to the baseline, and then we come up, right, up to the top, near the top line, and we drop down. And then we go up again. I still ran out of room. I didn't space that well. Let me try one more time. Calculating the width is important. So some letters require like and what? They're wider letters. They require a little bit of advanced planning. So there's room for that. Okay, so we drop down in an angle, and we go up to the midpoint, and we drop down to an angle, and we go up. There we go. Boom. Alright. Some more. That's phonogramology.
The next one is capital X, the fast one.
The fast one, very good. Okay, in the direction in which we write, we drop a slanted line to the right. Very good. Picking up the instrument, the pencil, we go to the top, and we drop a slanted line down to the left. I think actually I've got that one too large on the bottom and larger on the top. Calculating my spacing, let's do that sample again. Start at the top, drop down, and go far enough so that the cross is at the midpoint. There, it's better. Capital S. Alright? Last phonogram, capital, that's it. Capital letters. There you go.
Capital Z.
Capital Z, upper line, lower baseline. And again, without lifting the pencil, go in the direction of which we write with the first horizontal line, dropping down in an angle, slanted line, and coming across on the baseline with the lower line, capital S. And we have now concluded the uppercase manuscript headers. Is there anything left on that topic, or it goes into another one? That's pretty much goes into the next one, the numbers, right? Okay, all right, good job. The question has arisen as to why cursive writing is required in schools at a particular grade level. According to Spalding, and in most traditional schools, cursive handwriting begins usually at the beginning of the 3rd grade, and as we saw in Spalding, sometimes it can be introduced at the end of the 2nd grade. It is only to be introduced if the child has mastered the manuscript alphabet. And as one lady asked, well, where she lives, people do not use cursive writing and would question as to the need for it. My understanding from at least my upbringing many years ago, when things were traditionally taught and really weren't questioned, was that cursive writing was faster by connecting letters. The pencil was not lifted so often from the paper, and writing rate, writing speed would be increased. Then also, it was an aspect of beauty. Penmanship was a specific subject. It was taught, and at least in America when I grew up, I don't know how often it is now taught, but back in the 50s, penmanship was taught. Every single teacher that I saw in my primary schooling wrote the same way. They used what was called the Palmer script. So whether you had your 2nd or 3rd grade teacher or your 6th grade teacher, and they were writing on the board, the writing was identical. We saw it modeled all the way through. And we took all the children, and the children learned the script, and there's, just as we're learning the basic formation of all the alphabet letters, in terms of manuscript, we learned the basic features of script. And we followed it, and all the children, certainly by the end of 6th grade, were writing exactly the same. And I see now, even in India, I see the handwriting of certain Madhajis who are from my, background of the same age. And if they're writing something, the writing is almost identical. And it was taught the same thing, right? And there was a breakdown in that kind of instruction. I know even in America in the 70s, progressive methods, and many traditional subjects were dropped, such as handwriting, grammar, diagramming, many things that have had to be revived, because after a point, people realized, well, somehow or other, things deteriorated without this kind of instruction. But essentially, my understanding is that cursive writing, is beautiful. It can be beautiful. And also, it's practical because there's more efficiency. Pencil is not lifted so often. There's definitely a need for knowing manuscript or print. Oftentimes, legal documents, information, they say, please print the information, and at the end you sign your name. Use your signature at the end. And they want a difference. They want your signature. They don't want you to print your name. Right? We want to see your signature. So signature implies cursive. And then writing out other information in print, just so there's no mistaking it. Because sometimes people may not be able to read cursive. They haven't been taught to decode cursive writing. But definitely, traditionally in America, and I know in the early days, when I see pictures of legal documents all done in hand by former presidents of America before the printing presses, they looked like they were master calligraphers. Their handwriting was, dip pen and ink, and it was so beautiful. Those documents that they wrote were like some master calligrapher's art. So before the printing presses and before technology, and definitely before computers have done a lot to undermine the need for a good handwriting, because people say, well, why should I bother? I just type something now. And SMSing now has even made spelling. People are spelling the way they do SMSs. So spelling, as they've realized, spelling is deteriorating, handwriting is deteriorating. So there really does need to be a need for understanding still the necessity for writing well. And handwriting does reveal character, whether people know it or not, or whether they like it or not. We have many books on graphology, on how people who are graphologists can examine handwriting samples and detect the character of a person. One of our teachers in the Gurukula, Guru Prasad, she also took Spalding. And she told me she worked in a bank for a while, and that they had to learn graphology, so they could tell from the signing of the checks if a person was honest or not. So there's still obviously a need for, there's a need for good handwriting. You still do have to use your pencil and your paper. Computers, not everybody has one, and not in all cases do you carry it with you, right? And on top of that, there may be a power outage. It's like here in Vrindavan, we're faced with that type of thing all the time. So it's good to be flexible. Doesn't mean you shouldn't know a computer, but you should also know how to write well in print or script. Does that help? Okay. Hare Krishna.
All numbers should be made halfway between the size of a short and a tall letter, so that the number 1 will not be confused with the letter L, and the number 0 will not be confused with a capital O. The numbers 8, 9 and 0 begin at 2 on the clock. Since they are taller than short letters, elongate them somewhat vertically. The rule of the spacing of numbers that begin at 2 on the clock is the same as for manuscript letters. Start just far enough away to begin a new number at 2 on the clock.
Okay, so in other words, if a letter has to start to the right to allow for the spacing to the left, then room has to be made for that starting. Okay, so 8, 9, and 0, all right, are the ones that we'll show those first. Again, these are not tall all the way, and they're not short, they're midway, so as not to confuse them with letters. So we start with the 8 at 2 o'clock, and we curve over to 10, and we start curving around at 8, and we curve back to 4, and then we come back up to 8. Did I say 8? I'm sorry, I should have said 10. I'm not sure what I said at that point. And we come back and we connect at 2. So here's a numeral 8. I don't remember if I said 8 or 10 here. I hope I said it should have been 10. So the positions are 2, 10, and 4, and 8. Numeral 9 starts at 2, and we curve around that. And we come back over to 4. And they're a little elongated, and we drop down with a straight line. All right? I don't think I made that quite long enough again. I'll try another 9 here. Start at 2, come to 10, 8, 4, and we come back up and we drop it down. And then our next one is 0, which if it's made too tall, looks like a capital O, or could be mistaken for a lowercase o. So this is also a little bit taller. And we start at 2, and we go to 10, and we come down to 8, and 4, and back up again. Alright, this one should be a little taller. This one should be a little taller. I'll do those samples once again. Alright, again, this would be our midpoint. So these are halfway between the tall letters and the short letters. Starting at 2 for 8, 10, curving around to 4, coming back up to 8, and then coming back up to 2. So we have our positions 2, 10, 8, and 4. And then the numeral 9 starts at 2 and curves up. So it's a 10, 8, 4, and comes up here, and it drops down to the 9. And the numeral that starts, we show the position 2, and then the 0, the digit 0, starts at 2, elongate a little bit, 10, 8, baseline, 4, and back to 2. And the reference point here is 2. Okay, so you see they're a little bit above what would be midpoint. Just so they're not confused with either lowercase or capital letters. Okay. All right, so you want to read the text for the next 5 numerals?
The numbers 1, 4, 5, 6, and 7 begin with a line, and all lines start at the top. The left-hand vertical line of 4 is written first. The horizontal line of 5 is short and is drawn last in the direction in which we write. The bottom of 6 ends on the base line, so it never looks like 0. The number 7 begins with a line drawn in the direction in which we write. The numbers 1, 4, 5, and 6 sit very close to the preceding number.
Okay, so the first one is number 1. It's just a simple straight line. Alright. I think I made that one a little too tall. I better drop that down. Again, we don't want to confuse the 1 with an L. So this would be our midpoint. We want to be halfway above midpoint for the starting point. Okay, the 1. The next one is the 4, beginning with a vertical line on the left side, coming across with the horizontal in the direction in which we write, and then forward a little bit, and then we drop another vertical for the 4. The 5 begins with a vertical line. We stop here and curve around to 4, and come back up to 8, and we draw a horizontal line in the direction in which we write at the top. The 6 is an interesting point on this numeral. It curls in at the base, like this. As you said, so not to confuse it with the 0. And then 7, simply enough, horizontal, and we drop a slanted line down to the base line. So now we have 3/4 spacing for the numerals. Okay? Hare Krishna. On that one, now we have to do the last 2. Right?
Numbers 2 and 3 begin at 10 on the clock and sit very close to the preceding number. Note that no lowercase letter starts at 10, so these two numbers should be thoroughly understood by children who show confusion about direction. Before the children write 2 and 3, ask where these two numbers start until every child knows they begin at 10 on the clock. This is very important to prevent reversing.
Okay, so number 2 starting at 10, that's the important instructional feature. Here's your midpoint in the space. So we begin at 10 o'clock, and 2, and we curve around. We come down to the baseline and she puts a little curl on the 2, and the 3 also starting at 10. Curves over to 2, and it comes in, and then it curves around to 4, touches the baseline, and concludes at 8. And she shows the numerals 10 on both of these, on the left for the starting point, and she shows 8 for the finishing point for the numeral 3, 2 and 3. Right? And the last exercise in the book, now have the children write all the letters in the line showing the proper spacing. So that's important too, not just the individual letter, but its relationship and position to preceding and subsequent letter. Hare Krishna. Present the last section in handwriting, in printing handwriting in the Spalding book. And this one gives us the proper formation for punctuation marks. Punctuation marks are a very critical feature in writing. So this is a very short little section, but again, it's very specifically described. So Mataji will be reading the punctuation mark guidelines, and I will just show them. This is very short. I will just show them on the board. Right, so she will begin.
Punctuation marks. When introducing a period, a full stop, say a period, or full stop, is made by pressing the pencil on the line close to the letter it follows and lifting the pencil.
Okay, simple enough. Full stop or period. Okay.
A comma is a tiny half clock. It starts on the base line close to the letter it follows and goes below the line, rounding from 12 to 6 on the clock. This explicit teaching keeps children from setting periods, full stops, and commas just any place, and also provides a precise kinesthetic feel. It also helps them to notice commas and periods on the printed page. Parentheses, question marks, exclamation marks, quotation marks, and apostrophes are started at the same height as numbers.
Okay, so the numbers are midway above the middle line, right? They're not as tall as uppercase letters, and they're not as short as lowercase letters. They're 3/4 of the way. That's an important feature. Okay, so parentheses. Is there a description for that, or we just know? Okay, so parentheses again, not in the middle and not at the top, but 3/4 of the way. So obviously, parenthetical marks are like this. Okay, and then the next one would be the question mark, starting at 10 o'clock, over to 2, and curving in and coming straight down, and a full stop below. Exclamation mark, simple enough. Drawing the line down with a dot below. Simple enough. I think the important thing in this is that the height, obviously we know how to do this, but making sure that the height is not as tall as capitals and not as short as lowercase manuscript letters. And then the next picture
marks, then apostrophes.
by question marks and apostrophes. So now we have our apostrophes of apostrophe marks, and those little pairs, those like a period, and it goes up on the left side, and on the right side, the little dot and little tail goes in reverse, like that. And then the apostrophe is all by itself. It's just the dot, not one. Okay. So here we have a set of question marks, 2 going up, 2 dots going up with the tail, and 2 dots with the tail going down, and the apostrophe is the dot with the descending half curve. So that's simple enough, punctuation marks. And again, the importance is that they are 3/4 of the space, right? Rather than half or almost full.
Same
Same numbers. Okay. And any other point? You want to read the last paragraph before cursive?
After children can easily form the letters and numbers correctly, they should learn to reduce the size of their handwriting to prepare themselves for cursive writing, as described below. Students now begin using the 3/8 inch 1.0 centimeter in place of the 5/8 inch 1.6 centimeter lined paper.
Okay. And that brings us now to the section of cursive writing, which we will not incorporate in this series of little videos, because that's for 3rd grade. We're trying to get what are the essentials for beginning to teach the Spalding method. Up till now, we have been examining the Spalding book, and we have been doing all of the preliminary steps required to bring us to the heart of the spelling lesson. We had to learn preliminary skills, such as how to sit, how to hold a piece of paper, how to hold a pencil, how to hold a piece of chalk, how to form the clock face, how to make the 6 features, and how to apply the 6 features to writing the 26 letters of the alphabet in both upper and lower case. So now we are faced with the heart of the spelling lesson. Teaching the spelling lesson through phonograms and rules. But prior to this, mastery of the preliminary skills is required. Otherwise, the precision required for the best results will not be possible. So everyone, please note that fact. Nothing should be left out. Everything should be taught until the level of mastery. Now we're faced with the most important, as I said, aspect of the spelling lesson. Teaching spelling using phonograms and rules. And we're going to make a little code here. So this is our spelling lesson. We'll put S with a lowercase p. Excuse me. We'll do our radiant pattern because we have a lot of technical information to review. Overview before we start actually doing the spelling list. If we jump right into it, people will not have the foundational understanding of why they do what they have to do, and then they will give up the process, right? So the first topic under teaching spelling using phonograms and rules, and this occurs on page 42 of the 5th edition of the Writing Road to Reading. The first topic, and we'll put the wheel and a little code, a recall code is O for overview. We'll be reading from the overview, all right? The second topic in the section is the extended heirs word list. So I'll put 3 symbol letters here, extended heirs word list. The list of words we use to teach the Spalding spelling is specifically chosen, and we'll read why. It's called the extended heirs word list. The next topic in this section on teaching spelling through the phonograms and the rules is the primary spelling vocabulary notebook. Okay, so primary means the first notebook, we'll put P, and then next we'll skip a space, spelling V, vocabulary, N for notebook. The primary spelling vocabulary notebook. That's the next heading. A very important part of the book. the whole process, the notebook is essential because it is the spelling list for the primary students. And as the students get older, you'll see there's the intermediate spelling vocabulary notebook. The rules that the children face most often are included, included in that notebook. All right, so far we have overview, extended Ayres word list, and the primary spelling vocabulary notebook. These are topics that we have to understand. The next major topic is the intermediate spelling vocabulary notebook. So we'll put another eyelash on our wheel. Capital I, space, S, V, spelling vocabulary, give a space notebook. So we have the primary one, and we have the intermediate notebook. The primary one is for grades 1 through 2, first through second grade, and the intermediate notebook is for grades 3 and beyond, when cursive writing is introduced. Okay? 4 topics: overview, extended Ayres word list, primary spelling vocabulary notebook, 4th one, introductory spelling vocabulary notebook. Okay. The next topic we have to understand is the 29 rules. 29 rules. There are 29 spelling pronunciation rules given in Spalding, and we'll read about how they are presented. Okay, these help explain how the English language works. 29 rules. Right. The next topic is called the Spalding marking system. We'll put S, M, S. Spalding marking system. When the words are presented, there's a system of markings that have very important significance in how the word is spelled or how the word is pronounced, or a particular rule that has to be understood. This marking system looks a bit mysterious at first, but once it's understood, it gives the teacher and the student a clear understanding of why a word is spelled the way it is spelled, okay, or some rule behind the word. The next topic, after we learn the marking system, which is extensive but critical, is preparation for dictation. Once we have, how many points on this one? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I think we can't put too many points on a mind map. Anyway, we'll put one more. So we'll put P here. PR, preparation for dictation. That's another main topic. Okay, so far, for overview, we're going to learn about the extended Ayres word list. We're going to learn about the primary spelling vocabulary notebook. We're going to learn about the one that starts in the 3rd grade, the intermediate spelling vocabulary notebook. We're going to be introduced to the principle of presenting the 29 language arts rules. And we're going to be learning about the Spalding marking system, what marks we need to use, and what they represent. Okay, and how to prepare ourselves, for dictating the spelling vocabulary list. Okay, those 6 points. We have more, so we cannot exceed too many spokes on a wheel, otherwise the wheels are ineffective. So I will now erase this, and we will continue because there are many points in this section that have to be covered. It seems a bit laborious, but this is the heart of the whole program. It must be thoroughly understood. Okay, we'll begin on part 2. This is part 2. Excuse me. The first point here is the syllable. Again, S, we'll just put S for syllable. That is an important feature in presenting the word list. What is a syllable and how do we indicate the syllable? The second eyelash is the vowel, V for vowel. Children have to understand what phonograms represent the vowel sound. The next is C, obviously the consonants, right? So this first wheel of eyelash thing we have to teach is how to show a syllable. The next one is recognizing the vowels. And the next one is recognizing the consonants. Okay, very important. The next point is underlining. Underlining. So we're going to just make a little mark here. The children have to know when to underline and why. We'll put a little U here. Underline. Okay, review again. Syllables, vowels, consonants, and the underlining. Okay. Next thing we have to do is the numbering system. And for numbering, we can put some numbers here. 2, 3, 4. The numbering system. The numbering system is a very important aspect of understanding the spelling of a particular word. The next feature that has to be discussed and understood is brackets. And we'll draw brackets here. Actually, the brackets are only on one side, so I can't erase, so I'll just put a little box here. And this represents B. I'll put B. Box for brackets. B for brackets. Because the brackets appear on the left side. We have to understand when those are used, how they're constructed, and what they represent. Next, after, and braces also. BB, brackets and braces. I think the brace is more like a curved line, like that for script. Straight line with curves at the end for script. The next topic presented in the book is called rules. Rules. You okay? It's hot, I know, and you're probably tired. Okay. You all right now? All right. All right. And the last one is called spacing. Spacing. So we have here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We're going over that one. Spacing between syllables and then dictation. So we have quite a few more, but we'll have to put another part in the wheel, so we put SP for spacing. All right. So S for syllables, V for vowels, C for consonants. We have to know how to insist upon all this in our writing. Underlining, the numbering system, bracketing, rules, and spacing. All right. Then after that, we're ready to dictate. So this is all preparation, quite a bit. A lot of information to cover. This is going to probably take a great deal of time to record, but without it, you're not prepared for what you have to do. This will be the most technical and probably most detailed section we faced, besides drilling the other day on the phonograms. But now you know your phonograms. Did you finally know your phonogram?
Yeah.
You know your phonogram. Right, right.
Yeah.
Right, you practice, and then you play the CD also, right, because that will help you with the sounds.
Yeah.
Did you have a chance to try that yet?
Yeah, I had it play.
Does it help? Yeah, you can just let it play while you're doing something else.
Yeah,
Right, and now you recognize them, and yeah, exactly. You don't have to sit and watch it,
I
right?
didn't know what I was really learning, but I knew that it would be required.
Right, no, it does help. Now that you know it, you've been introduced to them, you'll hear them, and they will make sense. But the important thing now is to approximate the sound, especially on vowels. You know, if your sounds are correct, you're not listen very carefully. So you're teaching the correct sounds when you're presenting the word to child. Otherwise, he'll learn the wrong sound, and then spelling will suffer, pronunciation will suffer. Okay, so we've done our overview. We'll take a little break now, end of this. Hare Krishna. We've now given you a topic overview of the heart of this Spalding program, which begins on page 42 of the 5th edition, and we talked about the subtopics, the overview, the extended Ayers word list, the primary spelling, vocabulary notebook, the Intermediate Spelling Vocabulary Notebook, the 29 Rules, the Spalding Marking System, the other topics that we covered just by topic, the title, the syllables, the vowels, the consonants, the underlining, the numbering, brackets and braces, the rules and spacing between syllables, and the dictation of the notebook. All right? So a little companion guidebook has been created. This was created for one of the seminars that I had to do at Pathway School in Gurgaon. So on page 11 in this little pink guidebook, I have here teaching spelling using phonograms and rules. And I'll just go over, I think for the sake of simplicity, some of the basic information in each of these sections, because to cover it in detail, I think might be just a little bit too time-consuming, and perhaps just a little too technical for our purposes. The book serves as an excellent reference for further detailed study. So now we know what the topics are, and now I'll just read a little bit more information about each of them. And I think that should give us a sufficient understanding of what we have to do. So the first was the overview, and I'll read what we have here, a summary of the overview given in the book. The spelling of English words is the major obstacle to easy writing and accurate reading. Learning to spell words by applying phonograms and rules unites the spoken sounds of English words with their written forms. So this statement is the summary statement for that section of the overview. In other words, the importance of applying phonograms and the rules helps us unite the sound with the written form. Okay? That's the potency of this phonogram. The sound and the written form are united, because with the conventional spelling method, that's often not the case. Okay? The second topic is materials, that's given here. So from kindergarten through grade 2, she's very specific. You'll need a one 6-sided number 2 pencil. You'll need a 5/8 inch lined paper notebook and a 4-inch ruler. Okay? And for grades 3 through 8, you'll need a one 6-sided number 2 pencil, then one red pencil, and one 4-inch ruler, so a small ruler. We'll be showing you later in a video clip the materials that are essential. We'll be putting those out so you can see them at a glance. The next topic was the extended Ayres word list, and in this little book, the 2,300 spelling words used in this edition include the most frequently used words in the English language. So these are called high-frequency words. That way the words we're learning are actually used very often, so that the child already knows not only how to read them well, but use them in his own writing. That was the third topic. The fourth one is the primary spelling vocabulary notebook. This is for grades K through 2, and it is one primary notebook, 5/8 inch lines, at least 34 pages, 34 leaves, sheets. Okay, so it's sufficiently long for what's required. And you'll see a sample of that here in this little book, a sample of that, a sample page from the primary spelling vocabulary notebook. Actually, this little book has taken the essence from the Spalding book, just so at a glance a teacher or an interested parent can get an idea of what's required and what can be done. The next topic is the intermediate spelling vocabulary notebook. This is for grades 3 through 8, and one intermediate notebook, 3/8 inch spaces with at least 50 leaves. That means 50 sheets. And you'll see here on the next page a sample page. At this point from the 3rd grade script is introduced, so you'll see the sample page of the preliminary, of the intermediate spelling vocabulary notebook in this little book. The complete notebook is included in the instructional materials section of the Spalding book. The next section is the 29 rules. Rules that directly govern spelling, capitalization, pronunciation, and grammar are directly taught. Each rule is taught prior to the dictation of the word to which it applies. Rule numbers are marked in the notebook. And you can see here on the sample page, after some of the words, you'll see the letter R with a full stop and a number that indicates the rule number that applies to the word given. Rules are not presented independently. They are presented in reference to a word to which they apply. That way the child sees the practical application at a glance. Spelling marking system. So we have a few points here. You'll notice that if you look closely at the sample book and also in the text, one point about the marking system, a vowel is underlined at the end of a syllable when it says its name. You see here the word me, the vowel E is underlined. Another point, phonograms of 2 or more letters are underlined to indicate one sound. Here we have phonogram in the word now, the phonogram ow-o. It's a 2-letter phonogram. It's underlined to show that it represents one phonogram. Okay. Numbers are placed above a phonogram when its sound is not the first sound. So in this case, we have the word is. If you look above the phonogram sz, there's a small 2 to indicate the second sound is used. Is, not is. It's pronounced is. You'll see also on this page that phonogram, the word the. In the second column, there's a little 2 placed between the letter T and the letter H. And there's also a number above the word, the a, o, u, and the word 2. Okay. Indicating the third sound for the phonogram a, o, u.
What did you guys do placed after?
A through G, this is on page 12 of the little pink book.
Yes.
You see the words me, do, and what was the question again?
2 is written in between T and H.
Right, because this, you place the number, if the phonogram has more than one letter, you try to center the placement of the number.
But T has only one.
No, this is the phonogram the. You see what's underlined? The.
What is under T?
The TH?
H is also underlined.
Yes.
It should be written after H.
No.
In between it will be.
In between.
Well, in this case, it's in between because these are tall letters. But the 2 is for the second sound. The.
So why not after H?
The rule is to put it to center the numeral.
Center of the.
Center of the phonogram.
Like in do.
Oh, in between the 2. So
Right.
it was like they would put it in between.
Right,
W and
between,
H,
yeah, you
but-
center it, right.
Like in do, 3 is written just above.
Above, because it's only one phonogram. If you look at E, the word she at the bottom,
Yes.
right? You see, it's a 2-letter phonogram. So that's underlined. Both letters are
Oh,
underlined.
so this must be underlined.
So that specifically was mentioned when we were reading earlier. So the numeral is placed in the, position it. She said position it
In
in
between.
the middle. In the middle. Right. This happens to be 2 tall letters, so it's tucked in.
What happens when sometimes, like, lots of times we just say the instead of
Right, no, that's what she calls a schwa. Schwa, I think, is the sound and it's used as a substitute for the proper sound. But if you follow rule 4, it's pronounced V, E, V, V. properly. In English is like everything, it starts to get relaxed. So all the vowels start sounding like and that means the diction is poor. So clear pronunciation will obviously help the correct spelling. The, e. That's why the spelling system helps the pronunciation. The. Any other questions? Is that clear now? Let's just say you have a 4-letter phonogram, right? Like A, the 4-letter A. And the phonogram would be positioned it would be underlined, and well, of course, this is only one sound, so I'm sorry, that's not a good example. A good example would be if you have more than one sound. Right, O-U-G-H. If you have the phonogram O-U-G-H, and you have the word cough, right? K-off, O-U-off. Off. So you have a 4, and you place it, right, towards the middle, right, not at the very beginning. So you underline the phonogram to show the number of letters in the phonogram, fixed combination. And the sound is the 4th one. O-U, off, off. So this word has 2 phonograms. It has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 letters, but how many phonograms? 2, right? Kutsa and o. So it's a different way of organizing. It's chunking. It's called chunking. You break up the word in phonograms rather than letters. Go ahead.
So for some things which maybe we've become slack in or just somehow it's slipped in our learning process.
Right.
Different words, like if I say the, and then someone tries to write the, it wouldn't be possible. Like where to say what if it's like a bigger word that maybe I have not seen or something like that,
right.
And I'm just reading it, and someone's supposed to spell it, or I myself am.
Well, if you're following the marking system, you'll know how to pronounce it. Because this already is
so
told you.
You don't have to be able to know a word to be able to spell it. As long
Already
as you
you recognize that this is pronounced thee. How did you know that? By the marking system. See, already you're following the marking system. So your question, as I understand it, is what if I come across a word I'm not sure how to pronounce properly?
Yes.
How to mark it?
The marking will be in the book for you.
Right, so because I think maybe we have to become more familiar with the marking, but there is a specific system for the marking. Like it's not that you have to know that. Whatever
words you have to present are already marked for you when you give the spelling list. Already you recognize that we're not pronouncing the word the properly. We're saying the.
But you couldn't misinterpret it and say t-he.
But that's why you're learning the phonograms and the marking system.
Because there's no such phonogram as he.
But if you understand the marking system, the is the phonogram, not th.
Right, yes, e has to be.
So if you look at the word, e, it's the phonogram the, and the vowel e.
And it has to be e because it's at the end.
Yes, it's underlined.
So those
and
types of rules
form.
will just force you to be able to pronounce something properly.
Right.
Okay.
In other words, it's like if someone who knows how to read music,
Yes.
he can play the piano or a musical instrument. Someone who cannot read the music will not know the sound. So what you're doing is you're learning the sound that goes with the marking system. It's the same as reading music. If I look at this sound and I see the marking system, then I know this is, how do I know that? The first, I'm talking about the th.
But that would mean that the is together.
That's the phonogram. Th, it's underlined. Do you see the underline?
Yes.
So what does the underline mean?
It's a phonogram, it's a fixed combination.
It's a fixed combination.
But if it's not underlined,
Then it's separate.
Then it's separate and it's.
but
not
if it's just in a book, you're reading something, like it's not underlined.
The
Yes.
marking
have to do
system
that.
is not there, then like how will a child know that in kaf C sounds like
He will
like,
only know that from the
that's-
phonogram system. He may not necessarily know that before he comes. He is learning from you.
Yes. But after the child has learned all this, then he will be able to recognize that this will be the second sound. If C, this will make the
If the
second
two is there, he knows that. That's how he knows.
So those two have to go together.
Yes, I'm not sure why I'm not understanding your question. But you, as a teacher, are presenting the word the. Our next spelling word is the. So we must underline this fixed combination. The phonogram is the. We underline the phonogram the, and we place a 2 above this phonogram to indicate we pronounce its second sound. The next sound in the word the is the sound E. We make the phonogram at E, and we underline it because it says its name. And the rule for that is rule 4. It's a pronunciation rule. A vowel at the end of a syllable or a short word usually says its name. Rule 4.
But Manaji, so what I mean is that I know that this word says the.
All right.
So I know that it will be the and e.
Right.
Because I know that word.
Right. Oh, but you're asking if a child sees text.
Yes, and they don't know that this is the or
TH.
or something.
Right.
Then
But-
is there still like a scientific system that phonogram must actually sound like this because these two or 3 letters are together in this sequence?
Beyond just exposure at a certain point, no.
Right.
He's having to learn the combinations from you at the beginning. So as he comes across a book, perhaps there would be some question. But basically, any of us have to hear a word to know how it's pronounced. And if we don't, we have to check a dictionary and understand the phonetic system. Did we not learn by sound? That's how. These are merely a representation of a sound that was already there. The written word is nothing more than the written symbol for a sound. Any language. The sounds came first. The written came next. This is a code. That's what a phonogram is. A phonogram is the written symbol for the sound. And here you have 2 sounds. So you're asking if a child sees a word like theology. He's not going to know if it's but that's very hard to say. So usually if he knows the phonograms, he'll see TH is probably the. Now he may not know if it's theology or theology.
But then if he asks, well, why does it have to be to the instead of the or something else?
Well,
then
that's just
you
what
just
comes
say,
from
well, that's just the way it is.
In this case, I don't have an explanation beyond that. Some explanations are there with some of your instructional tips. But at least he's already using the word the all the time.
Yeah.
So he has to understand this is the second sound, there's another sound. In this case, the is the sound. And E follows.
I'm still a little unclear as to how I could teach it because when I read, I just read and I don't really know how I know, because I never
But the
learned
point
this, so
is,
I can just read
you're not worried about that. What you're trying to do here is learn how to teach the spelling list.
But then if I have to explain to someone, this is why it makes this sound, I don't know why it makes that sound.
I would suppose that it's easier to say th or the with the TH combination than to say to. Now in Sanskrit there is a to, right? But in English, there's not. It doesn't exist in English. So a combination of TH usually goes together. I cannot think of an example when it doesn't. Can you? Can you think of a word offhand in which T followed by H would make two separate sounds? So then it's grouped. It sounded together, right? And the grouping will make two separate sounds. It'll say, or it'll say the. Is that still unclear?
A little bit, but
It is not clear. I think at this point, your basic concern should be to learn the marking system according to the words given and the rules that apply, rather than start projecting into circumstances that may never exist. I cannot tell you if there's a combination in which there's a T and an H that are sound separately. I doubt it.
yeah, I just have to learn that marking system first and then.
Because if we go through the spelling list and you learn the marking system, then this is the code for how the word is pronounced. And then that is what's taught to the child. The spelling marking system. A vowel is underlined at the end of a syllable. I think you understand that rule already, okay? The next rule, phonograms of two or more letters are underlined to indicate one sound. So there you have it, the, or the word she. The two letters, SH, you could ask the same question. Why are they sounded together? Probably easier to say. They blend. Would you not think that's logical? Why do we say learned and learned or stopped? After a P, it's hard to say something other than a T when you see D. The two letters together make that sound. Almost impossible to pronounce something else. Now, ow. We underline the phonogram ow, oh, it makes two sounds. But because we're pronouncing the first sound in now, we do not indicate a number. Second to the last word is ow. Is that clear? Okay. I think you're questioning if a child comes across a word in a book and he sees a TH, how would he know whether to pronounce that as a phonogram or as two separate letters? Of course in a book it's not marked. But if he's familiar with the phonograms and he knows the, he'll probably assume that it's the. He'll recognize it. You see in text, obviously nothing in this book is underlined.
That child will be certainly better than the child who doesn't know phonograms.
But the idea is for children to start to recognize phonograms in all cases. The child starts to see a word and he sees not the separate letters. He's beyond that. And even if he sees a separate letter, it may make three sounds or two. So he's thinking. And he will not know how it's pronounced unless he hears it. She says that. The child has to learn how the word is pronounced from the teacher. If somebody looks at a word in a book, I mean, I have words I come across like that in English that I've never seen before. And if I've never heard them pronounced, and they're of an unusual spelling, I'm not positive. And I'm maybe not able to understand the phonetic system in the dictionary. And unless I've heard it, how will I know? So the child has to hear the pronunciation from the teacher, enter it into the book, and mark it. And then he also can indicate the code. Just the way a musician. If you ask someone, please, a singer, please sound middle C. A singer will do it. Now, I can't just sound middle C. But a singer will do it, and he'll recognize it on the music line. A person who knows phonograms, he'll see a word. He'll recognize the sound or sounds. He'll be able to read the marking system, and in most cases, he'll be able to apply a marking system even when it's not before him. He'll be able to take a word that does not have a marking, and he'll be able to mark it relatively accurately. Just from exposure and practice, just the way a musician, right? If he hears a sound, he could put it in a book. If he hears a sound, he says, oh, this is the sound, middle C. I'll put it here, I hear it. Someone who doesn't know music will not know the pitch for middle C, and he will not know its placement in the music staff. It's a matter of knowledge plus sensory recognition. So what you're acquiring now is the knowledge of the sound and how to indicate it on a written page. These phonograms and the markings indicate the connection between the written word and the sound. That's why it's so critical. And already you're seeing, when you look at these words, G, O. Why isn't it ga? Or gu? Why isn't it? I don't have an explanation, but because I know Rule 4, at least I know I underline it, and it's Rule 4 because the rule is a vowel usually says its name at the end of a syllable. Why is do the third sound? I don't know why it's not do. But if I write the word do, it's d, o as in toe. Right? There's a phonogram for that.
That's where it could get confusing going to teach.
Your only concern is to start at the beginning and apply it. I think you're trying to project at a level because you haven't exposed yourself yet to the phonograms. And as you systematically go through the words and the list, just from the practice, it'll make sense. But it's not difficult to teach. It's not difficult to teach if you follow, right? It's not difficult to teach, and it is learned. Was it difficult for you to understand the first word we taught, E? Was it difficult to understand D, U? Would that be difficult to teach? Was it difficult to understand A, D, and say no markings? You just do one at a time. I think you're trying to project into a field and assume that something's down the line that will become difficult. It's completely before you.